Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Ironbark Podcast, and I am your host, Epion. Today, we're going to talk Universal Ostrich Farm, Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. So, we're going to do an update. I feel like I'm hoping this becomes a 3-part trilogy. I'm hoping it goes to the Supreme Court for, a trial or court case decision. Before I get into this, I'm going to need to do a little bit of a disclaimer. First and foremost, I do not condone or support any form of criminal behavior or conflict with the law. I'm seeing some reports and some things reported in the media. They're allegations. I don't know if they're true or not, but I see things like assaults, fires, arrests, and I'm not going to dig too into it. I don't care to. But I don't like that stuff. As I said on the previous podcast, we live in a free and democratic society, and we have an official way of dealing with things. And what we're seeing is some of that unfold with the court challenges, the petitioning of your local MPs, trying to motivate them to change law if you don't agree with it. That's the way you do things. You also have the option of a peaceful protest that doesn't disrupt society. Well, I know people will debate me on that, but a peaceful protest, and you can raise funds and that type of thing. Those are all good things. Those are in a positive sphere. That's how you get public support. Turning it into, basically things where people won't condone it, you're not going to gain a lot of favor. With that being said, we can move on. So, the call order was going to happen. It seemed like it was going to happen. They had law enforcement there. They were setting up kind of like these call tunnels with these haystacks. It looked inevitable. It was in the final hour before the decision was going to come down. I saw some reports of something that was very touching. It's very touching. They all joined in prayer, hoping that the Supreme Court would hear the case, or there would be some sort of intervention. And in the final hour, the Supreme Court said, okay, we'll take a look at it. Pretty cool. Maybe a little bit of DI there, a little divine intervention, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it could just... It's touching, to say the least. Yeah. So, from the latest update that I've seen, both parties in this matter have their materials submitted to the Supreme Court for review, and a decision could have happened last week on Thursday, this week, today, if I publish this on time. So it looks like maybe anytime now. Anytime. The word is on the block that these kind of determinations come out on Thursdays, if it's going to go ahead. It's very interesting. I hope it does go ahead. It basically just comes down to the issue of what's the public interest? As far as we know, they're healthy ostriches. They were once infected many, many months ago, nearly a year ago. Now they appear to be healthy. Is there a public interest in continuing the call order? Or is it just to send a message? Think about it, right? Is there a public interest in that? Is the public at risk or harm from these ostriches not being called? That would be something that would need to be pressed in the court case. And I think what it's basically going to boil down to is you're going to need to bring in expert witnesses who are experts in their field. So the government, the Food Inspection Agency, is going to bring in their witnesses. And I believe the Universal Ostrich Farm, if they were wise, now I'm not giving legal advice, this is just an opinion and speculation, would probably have to bring in one as well. They would have to subpoena one. The contention here may boil down to this whole so there's a thing called PCR test, right? And when you run a PCR test, there's cycles on them. And if you run like increased cycles, or what's called as increasing cycle thresholds, it amplifies picking up trace DNA or RNA. So what those traces are, they're not necessarily like, hold on, I'll read it. I have it on my phone here. Oh gosh, I can't find anything ever. What do we got here? Okay. So running more PCR cycles, higher CT values, increases the test sensitivity, making it more likely to detect trace amounts of the target DNA or RNA, such as residual viral fragments. So you can pick up low level of viral RNA. That may not be indicative of active infection. So this is what it'll basically come down to, is like there's going to be this debate. I don't know if this is what it's going to come down, but I feel like there could be this debate, and it's almost hearkening back to like the SARS and COVID discussion, where it's like, is this like viral shedding of like dead virus? Is that contagious? Da, 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 da. And there will be people, professional level people, I think Brett Weinstein might even be one of them, who would say, no, like that's not how it works. And this is where a lot of like, it could boil down to like what kind of biologist are you bringing in here? Are you bringing in someone and then you would have to bring in the studies that support this stuff. What studies exist? And then you'd have to pick apart the studies. I don't know if the Supreme Court is prepared for such a very biological, like academic debate in a sense. And I don't know if it will make sense to anyone that necessarily has to rule on that type of stuff, because they don't have an education in biology necessarily. It's an interesting concept. And not only that, the lawyers involved may not have a education in biology. And are they going to be versed enough to kind of comprehend this stuff, or to like pick apart the risk? Or I don't even know if this is going to be an issue. I assume that might be an issue, to be like, what's the public interest? You know, you want to call these on principle. Like we told you, we gave you a call order 8 months ago, so it's going to happen now. But it's like, what the damage is, if there was any damage, it's come and gone. It's over with. So like, what's the point here? Is it just like a punishment? It's an interesting concept. It's an interesting concept. I don't know. And then at the end of the day, would the Supreme Court be able to like dissolve their own bias? Would they be willing to accept the correct science, even if it's against like a political narrative they subscribe to? This is what becomes super, super interesting. And this is what would actually make it a very interesting case for the Supreme Court, I think. And then also kind of speaks to like property rights as well, right? Like, because technically animals, livestock are considered property by law. And it's like, does the government have a right to intervene? And then what's the threshold? Like, and is it risk? Like, what's the risk? What's the danger? What's the threat? And I think all that will have to be addressed as well. It's super interesting. I think people are sleeping on this case a bit, but it's like, it is kind of a big deal. What are some other things that went on with it recently? I guess like it's sort of become like a political football, which is a weird thing, right? Because when you think of historical liberal values, you think of like animal rights, like PETA, like animal rights activists, that type of stuff, right? Like Greenpeace, you think that's like very like liberal, very left leaning. So when you hear about the cull of like 400 ostriches, you would think like, oh, like a lot of left-wing people would sort of be in support of like protecting the ostriches. But it seems like it's very like, it almost seems politically homeless. And I think people are confused, like, because you're seeing a lot of conservatives as well that are like pro, what is it, like, I guess freedom, or like less government, like oversight or reach. And so it's very like weird. And then you have people kind of like taking like a certain stance on it, right? And I think a lot of people don't really know where they fall or where their opinion is, because it seems to be kind of like outside of their scope of understanding in terms of like, because the biology is deep, and even now science and biology, and yeah, a lot of like peer reviewed studies are heavily politicized, and you have to really be a professional to understand it, and you can't just be like, oh, this study, but it's like, okay, who funded the study? And was there studies before that were removed because the data wasn't beneficial or supported whatever the company who paid for that study? The list goes on and on. And it sounds conspiratorial, but like all that stuff it's readily documented. You can find it in Google searches, or you can throw it into AI even. I don't like. So like, where does the political football land? Like, because a lot of people tend to be pretty tribal when it comes to their political division, like their party. So if you're like left wing and you like animals, and you support like animal rights and stuff like that, would you be against it because, your political party or your political representative or whatever you subscribe to was like, oh, like the freedom convoy people are in support of this, and the enemy of my enemy is my enemy, or whatever the saying is? Or would it be a case of like, no, like this is an individual case? Is this a nonpartisan debate? Because like both sides have skin in the game, where one's about animal rights and the other one is about property rights, and it's sort of like, it's going to test that threshold of what's appropriate. It's an interesting thing. I think it's politically homeless, or at least it should be, or both parties have different vested interests and for different reasons. And I think it would be interesting to see that in front of the Supreme Court. I just hope it doesn't get too politicized. Like, I almost feel like these like trucker convoy people, if you support them or not, I'm not going to get into that debate here. It's just that it's stigmatized, right? Like, people have like 50%, like if you're liberal, you've designated them a certain way probably, and anything they affiliate themselves with, you might be like, oh, cut it dry or whatever. Like, I don't want anything to do with it. And so like, I don't know if the support of certain political groups, and it might not even just be the truckers, may actually do more harm than good. It's like, I think the best way to support the Universal Ostrich Farm is to remain politically neutral. Give your donations, contact your local MP, that sort of thing. Everything, as it is in a free and democratic society within the bounds of the laws, all that sort of stuff. There was some stuff they were talking about. An ostrich died. So this obviously kind of gets some attention. It's like, oh, an ostrich died. Was it, the virus? Was it avian bird flu? Was that a cause of it? And a lot of people might start to alarm. As far as I know, it wasn't avian bird flu. And I'm not even sure if they could test or continue to test if it was or not. But it might have just been old age or something like that. There were some tear-jerking articles I read, that they weren't able to be with the ostrich as much as they wanted to be, or not at all. I'm sorry. It's so hard to know what exactly happened without really getting it from the horse's mouth. And sometimes things are sensationalized online for different reasons, either for or against, right? So it's hard to kind of narrow it down, but you can do your own research on that. I'm sorry, I'm not the wealth of knowledge for all this stuff. I don't know if I mentioned this, but on the last podcast, but Dr. Oz, you remember Dr. Oz? He had a TV show. He sold a lot of stuff that maybe not necessarily great for you, but he was still entertaining. He offered to take and relocate the ostriches to his ranch in Florida, which is kind of like a neat gesture. It's kind of an interesting gesture, but I think he's been kind of affiliated, and Florida definitely is, with sort of Republican or conservative politics as well, which is, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing either, right? Because then people will be like, oh, Dr. Oz. But it seems good-spirited, right? He just wants to save ostrich lives. Yeah. I don't know. That pretty much covers it in a nutshell, more or less, I think. Yep. That pretty much covers updates in a nutshell. We should hear more this week, next week, maybe the week after that, because maybe it is a difficult decision to hear. But it's interesting. I don't know. I really think, when you think about it, let's say they retest the ostriches because they're like, they look healthy. And the Supreme Court's like, yeah, you know what? they do look pretty healthy, like they haven't died, test them again. They test them again. And they give them like a fair test, like a proper test, not something where like you get like the super high PCR where it'll test positive for any trace amounts, like a normal PCR test. And it's like, oh yeah, they're not positive. In fact, they're immune to it. They have antibodies, and we could potentially even use, like, this is the other thing that's being said, is like you could potentially use the antibodies to inoculate, other animals, other species, develop, some sort of resistance and cure, which could potentially help, the farming industry to some degree, right? I don't know if that's true or not, or if that's just like a straw grasp or whatever. But it's definitely worth investigating. It's definitely worth looking into. It's definitely worth having an expert weigh in on. That could probably help the case, right? Or depending on what side you're on, depending on what the expert opinion is. Yeah. I don't know. For me personally, if the ostriches are healthy and they don't test positive for any current disease, and they potentially even have like a potential cure that could benefit society in farming and agriculture, and there's no threat, harm, or damage that can happen to the public or other animals, then my position would be, let the ostriches live. Let them live. Like, why needlessly kill something just to send a message? Like, it doesn't sit well with me. And I think anybody with like a heart, or who likes animals, or whoever's been to the zoo and saw into the eyes of a quirky animal like an ostrich, some ostriches can be absolute pricks, right? Like, they can be like aggressive and stuff, but then there's some that are dolls, right? Like, they're like sweethearts, and you'd be like, oh, like, you wouldn't want to harm that animal. And then you think about how much money and resources would have to go into doing that and conducting that call humanely and stuff like that. And it's like, is that a wise, would that be a wise, like, spending of tax dollars? Probably not. Like, it probably wouldn't really have the support of the public, though it does seem like Canadians tend to not really care too much about anything. So it's kind of hard to say. Like, there'll be like groups of people that do, obviously, but generally, I don't know. Things always happen in Canada, and people just kind of keep moving. I mean, you see online posts and stuff like that, the odd protest, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm a dumbass and I'm an idiot. I don't know anything, and nothing is in this podcast should be considered legal advice, because it's not. It's an opinion, an uneducated, uninformed opinion, and legal advice and anything like that should be taken from a lawyer. Okay? A lawyer. I am not a lawyer. I'm a dumb guy. I'm a dumbass. I don't know anything. Maybe I say something, you go, I'll ask my lawyer that. And then the lawyer goes, that guy's a fucking idiot. What are you doing? It could be as simple as that. I don't know. I'm hoping there's a part 3 on this podcast. And I hope it follows the court. Like, the Ostrich Farm Supreme Court trial could be a long and spicy one, right? It could be. And then it would, like, maybe I turn it into multiple series. Like, it follows it. It's like the Amber Heard Johnny Depp case or something crazy. It probably won't be that long, but I really hope it just doesn't come down there just like, yeah, I'm not going to hear it, call. I don't know. I feel like I feel like, those justices, like the Supreme Court justices or judges, they're people. They're probably have big hearts. They probably have pets. And when they look at this, they're probably realizing, like, oh, maybe I should read into this, or like look into this materials here. I don't think they're allowed to look at like news articles and stuff, obviously, but they'll look out, and hopefully like the dossiers and stuff that they've prepared are good. And I don't know, hopefully they put in some really good like key points in there, some strong key points. I think that's honestly what it boils down to, is kind of like how compelling of an argument you can make. They do have a lot of legal fees. I think I saw it over 200,000, maybe even approaching 300,000, and they're getting a lot of support and a lot of funds. So I don't know if you feel a certain way about this, maybe throw them a little love. I saw an article. They were talking about like their bills, like their creditors and stuff are kind of, shaking them down a bit now. Like they're kind of looming and that's, of course, like if you just spent a ton of money in the legals, like the most amount of money you can spend in the legal system, the most amount. Like going to the Supreme Court is hella expensive, and that was probably a decision in and of itself that was like, holy fuck, all right, pull the fucking trigger, we're in this deep, might as well keep going, follow it through, which is respectable, because that means you really do believe in what you're doing. It's not just like, I'm going to kick up a stink and then, I don't know, fold when the going gets tough. So they're there. They put down the money, or at least like some sort of loan or whatever. I don't actually know. I'm assuming. It's quite interesting. It would be it'd be so crappy to just be like, yeah, like you spent all this money, and they're just like, nah, nah, B, we good. We're not gonna deal with this. That'd be shitty. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think like a lot of laws in Canada are probably good good to be reviewed. I feel like a lot of things have been the way they are for like a long time, and I feel like a lot of sentiments, outlooks, perspective, I think like knowledge, I think science, like there's been so many like different studies and stuff that have come out now where a lot of things probably seem archaic and old now, and they probably are, and they could use a good overhaul. Like I don't know if I'm accurate with that, but it just seems that way. And it seems like, I don't know, like, is like at the end of the day, government officials are elected to represent the majority of the will of the people. And sometimes it seems like, like, are they doing, and they might be, like, I'm not saying they aren't, because, you definitely see like the division between party lines, but like that I was saying earlier, this thing almost seems politically like divorced, like it's nonpartisan, because both parties could technically have skin in that game. And I don't think anyone really wants to be, left holding a political football or hot potato where it's like all of a sudden people like look at them disfavorably. Because if you support the culling, then some people might say, oh, you support like the death of innocent animals, and then that's not a good look. It's not a good look, right? Even if there is some sort of like hazard or harm that could exist from these animals continuing to live, it wouldn't be like, and it would always be disputed as well. Because here's the thing about science, and a lot of people don't realize this. There was like a mantra that was like, the science is settled. That's actually an oxymoron, because the process of science is like a continuous study of tests and like deliberation and improving like a point through rigorous testing and experimentation, and with new data and new improved like instruments, you come to new conclusions, or maybe you reaffirm old ones. And this constant cycle of like challenge and test and theory is what science is. It's like this. It's never settled. It's never really settled. Like it can continue on indefinitely as we advance our techniques and abilities and knowledge in society and as humans. It's not just like, oh, boom, like we figured it out. Like we always think we're at the peak of our civilization. Then you look 10 years behind and you're like, oh, we didn't know shit back then. Like, look what we got now. We got smartphones. Oh, look what we got now. We got self-driving cars. Oh, look what we got now. Like we can teleport. Like, look what we got. You know what I mean? Like we always think we're at the threshold, but we're always not even close. We're probably still archaic in many ways. So yeah, that's like something. It's like science is like a constant conflict. It's a constant experimentation. So you can only go with the best at the time. So it is basically going to be based off of the science we have available to us at the time, which will be based off, I'm thinking, key studies into doing with like, virus immunity. Like, and here's the thing. COVID made things so political. You get sick, your white blood cells, you gain this immunity, you now don't get sick from that thing. You're now immune to it. You have a natural immunity. And then they call it like a herd immunity. Remember, like they used to do chicken pox parties. You get all sick. You get all the kids together. Oh, you're all going to get chicken pox. We're just going to get this all out of the way at the same fucking time. Like, it's a good time. Let's get it done and over with. Kids are immune to chicken pox. Keep it moving. Move on with your life. Now it's like that doesn't exist. The only way to become immune is like a vaccine or get vaccinated. Is that true? Or like, is that true? Do people earnestly believe that? Like, or was that just like a political hot potato because people were really nervous about this thing they weren't sure about? Like, I don't want to take sides here. I'm not trying to make anybody angry. I swear to God, I'm not trying to do that. But it's just is what it is. And here's the mere fact of it. 50%, it looks like, believes one thing and 50% believes other. At some point, you have to kind of acknowledge, okay, both sides carry weight. Like, that's how it is. So it is what it is. You can't other the other side either. You can't be like, oh, they're dumb, they're stupid, they're brainwashed and they don't understand things. Like, we need to have discussion, and we need to have compromise, and we need to have like, we can't politicize things, man. Everything can't be politicized. It gets crazy. And fear is the mind killer. Dune, you know what I'm talking about? It's all exhausting. It's all exhausting all the time. But this is the thing. We live in like a world now where you can't even have these discussions. And the moment you start talking about it, the moment you start debating it, or you push against someone's established belief and they don't actually know anything beyond a talking point, they lock up, they freeze, they don't want to discuss it. They just think you're crazy and they shut down. There's very few intellectuals out there. A lot of people are just kind of like, keep it moving. Tell me what to think. Okay, good. Keep it moving. Keep it moving. And unfortunately, we live in a society now where you can't be autopiloted. You can't just be like, oh, tell me what it is. It's like everything you got to dig into. Everything. Even the things you believe in, you got to dig into, because those are the things you got to challenge the most, because you don't want to look like an idiot, or at least be like, you won't look like an idiot because like at least 50% of the people will support you because they'll also be wrong with you. But you should do yourself a service by always trying to find the most correct information. You can't just go by what you see. You can't just go by some media post, some headliner. You got to go into like the primary source data. You got to go into like the actual double-blind studies. Then you got to be able to read and interpret them. You have to understand what's being said. Maybe AI can help you, but then you have to find the flaws in it. Maybe AI can help you do that too. Be like, yo, what are some of the criticisms of this study? Are they valid? And then I'm sure there's papers out there that probably, right, that judge them and stuff like that. And then you have to kind of come to your own conclusion. And then when you arrive there, then that should be your opinion. Other people's opinion, or what they just champion or tout, shouldn't be your opinion. It's not the way it should be. And here's the thing. Nobody looks at research papers. Fucking nobody. Nobody I talk to, at least. Anyone I've ever talked to, I'd be like, oh yeah, what research paper supports that? They'll be like, oh. They couldn't even tell you what like .gov or institute website to pull it from. They would just I heard it on Fox News. I heard it on MSN. I heard it on CBC. I heard it on CNN. I heard it on Instagram. I heard it on Facebook. It's like none of that shit. And I notice I use both conservative and liberal outlets. I heard it on X. It's like none of that shit carries weight. That's not a primary resource. That's just all of those things is literally just some random person talking shit. It's just the guy who works at the news station It's literally just a random dude who works there. He just happens to be on TV, and he's just talking shit. It's like his boss told him to say it. Does his boss have a degree in biology? No. Has he read the research? No. They're just like, this is what we're going with. It's like, why are we going with this angle? Like our sponsors are so and so and so and so and so and so, and they want us to kind of read it this way, or else we're not going to get funded anymore. Oh, okay, yeah, fuck, that makes sense. And you keep it moving. And the same thing goes with like individual creators. They get sponsors and stuff like that, and they have a viewer base, a viewership, and if they change on a certain opinion, they'll lose followers, and then less views equals less monetization, and sometimes they get captured by their own audiences. So even independent journalism can't always be trusted. You're your own journalist. That's the world we live in. I'm talking to both the left and the right here. And then even then, when you're your own journalist and you come to your own conclusions, there will still be people who are on either side of the fence. Because, to quote Socrates, all I know is that I know nothing. And I think that's a good way to end the podcast. It's a good way to end this episode. All I know is that I know nothing. That's the only thing we can be absolutely certain of in this life, is that you know nothing. I mean, in terms of science, not to do with spiritual stuff. All I know is that I know nothing. Because we can never be 100% absolute in our belief and stuff. There's always that little bit of doubt, when it comes to anything. Like, let's say you get a sickness and you get an antibiotic, you take it, you're like, I'm 100% absolutely sure this antibiotic's going to cure it. It's like, well, how do you know it's the right antibiotic? How do you know it's not, the thing you have isn't resistant? How do you know it's not a virus and not a bacterial infection? Like, so even when you think it's going to work, you don't actually know. I think that's the end of the podcast. Yeah. End of the podcast. Yeah. I don't want it to end. I'm having a good time talking to you guys. It's been a while. It's been a hot minute. There's a lot I could probably talk about. I haven't talked about nature, hiking, anything like that in a while. I got to get more active on here. This push to 100 episodes has been crawling. I don't know. What could I look at? There's probably tons of stuff. I'll save it for another episode. We did about a half an hour. That's decent. Okay. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful week and a weekend. Stay beautiful. Stay beautiful, San Diego.